When I arrived in France, I realized, oh my gosh, no, this is actually going to be more complicated. This is going to be more difficult. In fact, you become you simplify, your identity is simplified to just like, yes, Suzi, the American, buying a ticket for a museum, and they ask where you're from because it's for their statistics or whatever. And I'm like, Dijon, je suis de Dijon. I'm from Dijon. And they're like, yeah, where are you really from? That was hard at first because I thought, oh gosh, I spent all this time doing these studies and making this network of people that I know and connections in the States. And now here I am in this foreign country and nobody knows me and nobody knows where I studied or what my diploma even means.
17 years ago, Suzi didn't just visit France. She stayed. Today she lives in Dijon, in Burgundy, about 90 minutes from Paris, and it's a city known for its medieval streets and its legendary wine. She married a Frenchman, learned the language, raised her children here, and built a career. After nearly 2 decades abroad, what happens to your identity? Do you remain American or does something shift? Suzi, who are you? Qui es-tu? Bonjour Suzi. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for coming to the channel of Feel Good French. I'm really happy to avec plaisir. Yeah, let's just sprinkle some French words all along the video. I like to do that, and I will write them down for the people. So feel free to say as much French expression, les expressions françaises, as you want. I think a lot of people know you already with your channel, Fired Up Suzi. That's really good channel with, I love your video, I love your generosity, you share a lot of content that's very, very practical for people. I'm really impressed by all the good work you do, the way you film the city when you want to present a city, all the practical information you give. But now let's go more in depth behind who is Suzi from your channel. And I wanted to ask you something. You may be thinking, oh my God, I have to really think about it, but feel free to just answer spontaneously. When you think about the younger version of you, when you first came to France, do you remember this, Suzi? What would surprise her most about the woman you've become today?
I think it was very progressive for me. I came for the first time in high school, and then I came for a semester during my studies in university, and then I came for the first year after I had graduated from college. And so it was little by little I was coming to France, but also I lived in Madagascar for 2 years. I was in the Peace Corps, and so I was a young woman exploring the world. I didn't really know what direction my life would go in or anything. My husband and I sort of decided that we would get married and see and see what happened in a sense. So I think that when I first arrived in France, when we got married back in 2008, I think I was still in sort of that adventurous mindset. I didn't necessarily think of myself at that time as someone who was coming here to settle down here. And as the years have gone by, we've entertained the thoughts of, continuing our adventures or moving around, or and we just haven't, because it turns out that life is good here and we're happy here, and we've made a really nice life for ourselves here. I guess in the end, my younger self would be surprised to see that I've become so settled down in one place. But it's been great.
It's interesting because, as we mentioned before in our off talk, a lot of our viewers are people maybe that watch us from the USA or from an Anglophone country, and they want to prep their move. They are very, they investigate a lot and they watch as much video as possible to get ready for their big move. And I think you are the example of someone that didn't have all those steps. You didn't really have this master plan when you were a teenager. I'm going to France and marry a Frenchman and have a life here. And I think for you it was very natural, no? Like this whole life came. You just kind of let life decide for you, basically, no?
Yes, but at the same time, I was so much younger, and I had some experience here in France. So it wasn't like I was getting into something that was completely unknown for me. I knew that I really loved the French language and the French culture and living in France because I had already at that, even when I got married, had some experience living in France before. So it wasn't calculated, and we thought at first it might be temporary. And Dijon, why Dijon? Just because my husband happens to be from Dijon. It's that's also not something that we really, we didn't really consider other parts of France at all ever. I guess I didn't think about it that much. But on the other hand, the choice and the decision kind of seems normal, natural, I guess, now looking back on it.
You know, when you observe young people, there are people who are pretty much, from their area. You know, they are like, where did you grow up? What was the area where you grew up?
I grew up outside of Boston.
So around there, maybe in your childhood friends, some of them stay there and will always be in this area. You know, there is always people who are pretty much grounded in their territory. Did the teenager or child Suzy had like itchy foot? Like, did you kind of always where you were always like curious about what was out of your comfort zone, out of Boston? And
I think so, to some extent, yes, because I think that's why I started sort of exploring. But on the other hand, like you said, I mean, I always imagined myself just, probably living in my adulthood in the States. I didn't, like you said, I didn't sort of have a plan in mind. I didn't imagine that I would spend all of my adulthood outside of the States.
So you mentioned to me that your husband is from Dijon, but he also spent time in the Réunion Island. And for the people who don't know, La Réunion, l'île de la Réunion, it's part of France. So it's les territoires d'outre-mer. Outre-mer is like from the sea, out of the sea. I know that you've been in Madagascar, which is quite close to La Réunion. And you mentioned that Dijon was just the obvious choice, but did you not think of habiter à La Réunion, living in the Réunion Island, or like did you not have other places
Dreams.
yeah?
Yeah. So my husband was born there, but came back to France, La Métropole, with his family at a very young age. So his family is here, and I think that we are anchored here in Dijon because my mother-in-law and her husband live just 10 minutes from us, and my sister-in-law lives just 45 minutes away. So whereas my husband, yeah, he was born there in the Indian Ocean. It's a fun sort of fantasy to entertain sometimes, but I think that as long as his immediate family is in this region, we'll probably stay pretty close to here because for him and for us, his family is really important.
So now it's also your family, I
Yes,
imagine. Like,
yes,
yeah.
yeah,
La belle famille. It's kind of a
yes,
funny French expression. The beautiful family, la belle
yes,
famille. That's why we
yes,
say. That's how
yes.
we say it in French. It's quite funny. You are like French. Like you are like a French person, une française. But to go back to the younger Suzy, when you kind of first moved to France, do you remember what was the most disorienting aspect? Something that kind of shook you and was a little bit hard for you?
I remember when I first came here and we got married, and I was 28, so I had a little work experience at that stage, and I think I was kind of grappling with the questions of like what should I do? I had taught English, I had some experience with teaching English, but again, that wasn't a calculated decision. I didn't necessarily think that that was going to be my career path because I grew up thinking, oh, I can do anything basically. Like I'll apply for a job that looks good and they'll hire me based on my motivation. And and then when I arrived in France, I realized, oh my gosh, no, this is actually going to be more complicated. This is going to be more difficult. In fact, it's not necessarily as easy to kind of just decide, you want this job and to apply for it and to necessarily get this job. And so I think I'm happy to teach English, and I've found my way in that career, and I'm glad that I've had the chance to do that. I think that I was frustrated at first because I realized that it was going to be more challenging for me here in a sense, to find my way professionally than it may have been if I had stayed in the States. Although who knows? I mean, I don't know. It could have been just as challenging there as well. But that was hard at first because I thought, oh gosh, I spent all this time doing these studies and making this network of people that I know and connections in the States. And now here I am in this foreign country and nobody knows me and nobody knows where I studied or what my diploma even means. You know, it just doesn't necessarily translate. And so I think that it was hard at first, kind of just coming to terms with sort of starting fresh, starting with
Yeah.
from a sort of a blank slate.
Yeah, it's like getting rid of all those layers of identity that you built before in America. And you
Yeah.
mentioned to me that you said something that I find interesting, like your life, your former life didn't kind of count or was not recognized almost.
Yeah, in a sense, because again, we just have different reference points, I think. And, all of those connections that I don't think I was necessarily like calculating. I wasn't making connections in school, for example, because I thought that it would serve me later or anything like that. It's just naturally how you sort of go through your childhood and adolescence and young adulthood. And then, yeah, just to have it sort of fresh slate, wiped clean and
Yeah.
starting off in a new country, it can be a little bit disorienting, I think. And then you just realize, and I was so young anyway, then I quickly realized that I had a whole career ahead of me and that I was going to be able to make
Mm.
new connections and meet more people and have different opportunities than I would have had if I had stayed in the States. But yeah, at first it was kind of, yeah, disorienting to think that the life I did, I guess, at one point imagine for myself, that in fact it was going to be quite different than what I had sort of pictured.
I imagine there is always, I don't know the expression in English, like, but the two faces of the
Uh-huh.
coin.
Yes.
And what feels disorienting could also feel empowering.
Yes.
Like, I wonder if for you to start, with this blank canvas, the clean slate, if also maybe you find some empowerment in that, like kind of, oh, new language, new life, maybe I can reinvent myself. Or did you also have something like that?
Not so much because I think I struggled with like the French sort of system of like, okay, you have this diploma, now you do this job.
Ah, ah, yeah, we are quite rigid with
Yeah.
that.
And so maybe if I had had a different mindset, I mean, maybe I sort of put myself into that um,
Mm.
hole as well. Maybe if I had been more creative and taken more risks, then I could have tested out other sort of opportunities. Not exactly, but I do see what you mean. Like I even feel like I have an alter ego when I speak in French, that my voice changes a little bit.
Mm. Ah,
So
yeah,
I do.
that's
Yeah.
good.
Don't you think so?
Me, I'm terrible. I have to be honest. I'm not a really good example. My identity and as you can tell, my pronunciation is very French, and my identity is the same in French, in Spanish, and in English. I know some people changed. So, like, I have friends like when they speak French, it's like theater, and they embrace the French culture, and they are like another person. I have this friend. She's British, Emily, and she's amazing at with languages, and she embraced the attitude. When she's in French, she's like I don't know, she's this British, a bit posh when she speaks English, and when she speaks French, she's like a little bit like more from the street, very informal, and I don't know, she has a bit this attitude. And in Spanish, she's a bit more like not rude but direct. So she's a different person. It's quite
Yeah,
impressive,
I
but
think that's I maybe
yeah.
I'm not I maybe I don't necessarily do that because I'm not sure I have fully integrated two cultures, but I think my kids kind of do, which is funny. I can sort of think of their voices. They sound similar, very similar, obviously, but I think that they both of them have those sort of alter egos in their French and
Yeah,
American side.
that's interesting. It's like different layers, and it's
Yeah,
very rich. It's
yeah,
very rich in the
yeah.
end. You teach English. You told me that you are all, we are quite similar, like as a language teachers for this extent. Is it for you a way to, because you are far from your country, far from, maybe in your daily life you don't speak much English. I don't know how much English you speak on a day-to-day basis, but teaching your language, is that a way for you also to stay in touch with your culture, your language, who you like, where you're from? Do you take it this way?
A bit, and I would also say it's also a way for me to sort of feel competent because it is my native language. And
Mm.
when I'm in the rest of my life outside of the classroom, sort of bumbling through my life, trying to express myself in French and making mistakes and struggling. I mean, I don't know everything about even the English language, obviously, but when I'm in the classroom, at least I feel sort of a little bit of legitimacy because I'm like, okay, this is my native language and this is something that I have that I can share with my students that's authentic to me.
When you mentioned that, you know, your former life uh, was like kind of invisible, I was wondering, like, what is the perception from les Français, from the French people around you in Dijon? Do you think that sometimes you feel reduced to, Suzy, l'américaine, the American, or like, or maybe when you meet new people? And I wanted to ask you as well, like, usually, because I think a lot of Americans are curious about the perception of French people towards the Americans. How do you think people perceive you after having French kids and building a life here? Like, what do you think? What is like the with which glasses French people look at you?
It's interesting because I mean, I never really considered what it meant to be American or anything like that before I came to France, you know? And then it is sort of part of that sort of minimizing process, I guess, that happens, or I don't know, compacting process or something that happens where you become you simplify your identity is simplified to just like, yes, Susie, the American, which frustrates me at times because I'm like, oh, but I mean, I haven't lived there in so many years, but and yet still that's how, I don't know, people see me, I guess. But that's okay. I understand. But in terms of how French people interact with me, yes, I mean, I still get comments all the time about my accent, you know, if I'm buying a ticket for a museum, you know, and they ask where you're from because it's for their statistics or whatever, and I'm like,
Mm.
ah, Dijon, je suis de Dijon. I'm from Dijon, and they're like, uh-huh, yeah, where are you really from?
Where you are
Oh non,
from?
non, mais vraiment, moi j'habite Dijon maintenant. I'm from Dijon now.
It's your home.
Yeah, it's my
C'est
home.
ta maison.
Yes.
Mm. When you mentioned this friction moment when, because just to precise for people who don't know about it, French culture is very centered around the diploma. It's like like the career that you choose at university kind of define your future job. There is some sort of
Yes.
rigidity
Yes, you have to
around
be
that.
you for example, what the first year that I arrived in France, my husband and I got married in June, and I knew I was going to be teaching starting in September. And so I had, as many people do, a lot of experience working in restaurants, waiting tables.
Mhm.
You know, when I was in college and even after I graduated from college and I had my first job, I was still waiting tables at night and on the weekend. And so that first summer when I arrived in France and after we got married, I think I had work, I could work. I had permission to work. And so I thought, oh, I'll just, you know, stop by a couple restaurants and see if they'll hire me for the summer. And the first restaurant I went into, they were like, "Well, where's your diploma?" And I was like, "Yep, no, I don't have a diploma, but I have, you know, 10 years experience waiting tables." And they were like, ça va pas le faire. No, it's, you can't, like, we don't. And
That's harsh.
yes, it was harsh. I mean, on one hand, I was like, well, it's different because in the States, you know, a server might have 4 or 5 tables, whereas in France, you might have half the restaurant. So I thought in the end, like I dodged a bullet, you know, like, okay, I probably couldn't have managed at that stage with my level in French. I probably couldn't have managed a station with 20 tables in it anyway. I would have probably been overwhelmed. So it's okay.
Maybe it was this very restaurant that has standard, but
Oh
it
no,
is
it was just
true
a
that
pizza place.
yeah. Ah, okay. But don't you think that we are a little bit understaffed in France in restaurants in comparison with? I notice here in New Zealand, every restaurant or bar or coffee place I go, so much staff. Like I was thinking in France, it would be like 1 or 2 person. Here it's
Yeah.
like 10. Or I'm like, wow, this is a big difference. I don't know if
Yeah.
is it like that in the US as well.
I think because of the way that servers are paid, you know, they don't have to
Mm,
necessarily be paid a full salary. It's hourly and
yeah.
it's quite low because they get tips. I
Mm,
think that restaurants can hire more, they can have more servers on the floor, as opposed to in
mm,
France where they have to pay, you know, full salary for the servers that they have. So I don't know. Maybe that's
yeah.
why. I'm not sure.
Yeah, les pourboires, the
Yeah,
tips,
yeah,
pourboires.
yeah,
Different culture as
yeah,
well around
yes.
that. A lot of people wonder how to behave, no, in France. Like, do you leave pourboire in France? Do you leave tips?
Sometimes if we think the service is quite good and or if it's a really nice restaurant or if we're just, rounding up or feeling generous, yes, I like to leave a little tip.
You know, my students always ask me like, do we need to leave pourboire? And I'm like, this is like kind of your appreciation. But I say to them as a joke, I say, but also you have to keep in mind that les serveurs, the waitresses and waiters, they know that American leave tips, so they come to you with this kind of assumption as well that Americans,
Expectation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of la langue française, the language, you have such a good level, such a good accent. Um, you have also your life is built around France because you have your family, your kids. Can you just rewind a little bit and tell us a little bit your path with French? You know, I know it's a bit peculiar because you came here from a young age, but could you tell us also like the little tips, how you learned, like what is useful for you, if you have any references, anything to share with the listeners
Yeah.
about?
I mean, the way it worked when I was in school in seventh grade, you had to choose between French or Spanish. And because we lived not too far from Quebec, I think that's why I chose French. And so I took French all through middle school and high school and all through college. And I was hopeless. I was in, like the lower level French classes in high school. And I majored in French in college because I just took it every semester because I just didn't want to give up. But my grades were not that great. And as you get higher and higher in French, you have to study literature and everything. And I would always, go find the English translation of the book we were meant to be reading. And, like I was trying to compensate for the fact that my French was never very good. And then, of course, I spent a semester here, and I think that started to help. But I still hung out with American students, other Americans when I was here. I went back to the States, and then I think when I graduated from college, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have now my degree, my undergraduate degree is in French, and yet my French level is so bad. This is just pathetic. I was ashamed. And so I think, at some point I decided I have to come back to France. And then when I came back to France after college, I resolved to make French friends. And to really actively do as much as I could to really immerse myself in French and not just be a tourist and not just do the minimum to get by and not, and I think that's when the real sort of deep language learning started. Once I had French friends and once I was here and once I convinced myself that I could, for example, attempt to read a book without having the English translation. And that if I didn't understand every word, it wasn't a big deal. I do that. And I read mainly contemporary fiction in French. I have never really gone back to read the classics. And that's something I'm a bit embarrassed about. I keep telling my students, like, oh, this year I'm going to read Balzac. And I
Ah,
still haven't done
ooh.
it yet. I still haven't done it yet.
I think you will be truly French if you read
Molière.
Proust, À la recherche du temps perdu.
Okay.
In Search of Lost Time. It's like such a hard read, and
Uh,
it's like kind of a challenge to go through them because but it's really beautiful, and that's where
okay.
the Madeleine de Proust is
Yes.
from.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well, my son is in sixth grade. Well, he's 11, and so he's reading Le Médecin Malgré Lui de Molière,
ah
and it's
oui.
so fun. So he's just reciting passages at home and everything, and I'm like, "Ooh, what does that mean?" And he's explaining it to me because I think the teacher's doing a great job of explaining it to the kids, and so I feel like I'm learning it secondhand through him,
That's
which
good.
is fun.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's really fun. He had this right now. He's working on like memorizing a passage from it as well. So I keep hearing the
Yeah.
same passage again and again, and I'm like, ooh, I think I'm starting to understand a little bit. So that's good.
Ah.
And then I have actually got this out. Yeah, these are just a couple examples of the type of like contemporary fiction that I like. I love, Annie Ernaux. These are really easy and
Ah, wow.
approachable.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's upside down.
Yep.
Sorry. Annie
La
Ernaux,
place.
La Place, and Maëlys de Caronjal. I don't know how you pronounce her last name,
Ah
but
ouais.
just contemporary fiction.
Préparer les vivants.
Yeah. Have you read that one? It's
Non,
interesting.
I don't know it. Yeah.
Okay.
C'est bien? Is it
Yeah,
good?
si, c'est génial. Yeah. And
And
then
the
this is
third one?
Oh, this is my dictionary that I've been working on for the past 15 years or so. So it's a phone it's an address book, and you
Ah.
have the letters here, and then
Mhm.
when I'm reading in French, if I see a word that I think is worthwhile, I'll note it down. And so over the years, I've just been adding to it little by little,
Oh,
and
fantastic.
writing down my words, and then there's
Yeah.
still space. I'm still adding more, and
Yeah,
then
that's great.
it's great to have it because then I can go through, and now either I can feel very proud of myself because there are plenty of words here that I know
Mm.
now, or I can feel again a bit of shame because I still don't know these words, even though I've taken the time to write them
Ah,
down in my
yeah.
little dictionary.
Oh, that
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah, it's
You know
great.
that it's not as romantic, but I don't have it here. But have you ever used an ebook like the
Oh, of
Kindle?
course. And you just touch the word and you have the
Yeah,
translation. Yeah, I was going to mention that. I love that too.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
great.
actually, the Kindle, what I find amazing is that they collect all the words that you searched,
Yeah.
and then they can quiz you.
Oh, I
They
didn't
can
know
generate a
that.
quiz. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's the newest Kindle.
Okay,
I
okay.
mean, mine is not that new actually, but I was really surprised. But I always advise the students to do it because it's so easy to click on it and to have the meaning. It's just very handy. But you don't,
Yes.
as you mentioned, don't do it for every word you don't
No.
know. I think it's important.
No, and I don't interrupt the flow if I understand.
Yeah,
I'll just
yeah,
stop. But then,
yeah.
I imagine that these exist. I'm reading this book with my students this semester where they're in high school.
Ah, because of the movie that's just been
I didn't
released as
even
well.
know that the movie was being released. We chose
Ah.
this book last semester to read this semester. So we're reading it, and this is one of those versions, the books that has the translations in the margins.
That's great. Yeah.
It's really wonderful. So this is obviously in English with the translations in French, but this is
Yeah.
actually wonderful for me as well because
Mm.
here I am, I get the chance to learn some of the
Yes.
vocabulary in French as well.
That's
So
a good trick. Yeah.
yeah, it's wonderful. And so it's maybe not as convenient as just being able to touch the word in the Kindle, but I
Yeah.
love books like this as well, where you have the original text and you have some translations.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful cover.
Cover.
The
Yeah,
book
it's
cover.
great.
Yeah, it's nice. But yeah, we do have a collection of French novels that's been made for learners. And sometimes it's a little bit a simplified version. Let's say like if it's a classic, it will be a little bit simplified. And there is like in this book, there are like vocabs on the side. I can put some link of editing house that does those book. Maybe you came across them when you
Yeah,
were a student.
my kids read those in English and in their English classes, and sometimes I find that they're too simplified, that they're overly
Ah, yeah,
simplified.
yeah,
So I think you have to find good versions of those books if they are simplified.
yeah,
Um, yeah, but otherwise, just
yeah,
reading books, and that's why I don't. That's why I'm not reading Molière myself. That's why I'm reading contemporary fiction because
yeah.
it's more approachable. It's more my level.
Do you remember the very first French novel you ever read?
It was probably in my Francophone Africa class in college, maybe Camaralai.
Ah,
And
wow.
I probably understood, 5% of it. I don't remember. I
Yeah.
don't
Ah,
remember.
interesting. Yes, it's so cool that you had this experience as well in Madagascar because
Uh-huh.
I don't know if people know, but Madagascar used to be a French colony,
Yeah.
and there is a lot of francophonie
Yeah.
in Madagascar. So it's interesting that you had the different, enfin, you experienced different facets of French language as well. Did you speak a bit of French in Madagascar?
Yes, I think that's why I went to Madagascar was because I had that French background a bit. And we learned Malagasy. But again, my Malagasy was very, very basic. And so sometimes I would revert to speaking in French with people because it was just easier. It was an easier way of communicating. So yeah, I did use my French a bit in
Wow.
Madagascar.
I'm impressed. Because my grandma is from Madagascar and I just know a few words but I'm impressed that you know le malgache,
Oh no,
Malagasy.
the
It sounds beautiful.
Sakalev. I learned the
Yeah.
dialect from the northwest of the island.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's quite a pretty, I like the sound of it.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a nice,
beautiful.
nice language. You are yourself quite academic because you teach English at university and you learned French as well through school and you have kind of an academic background. So you learned kind French, I imagine, in a formal setting. But what are the things you just mentioned reading? But is there any things that you did yourself at the beginning to develop a routine in French?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just thinking about this today too. Um, when I was in college, we had conversation classes. So we had an assistant, un assistant
Mhm.
français, that would do these, that would, run these conversation classes. And I always went to all of those. And we had La Table Française. So once a week in the cafeteria, there was a table where you could go and speak French informally with the assistant who would be there. And so that was what I did before I left the States to practice my French. But when I arrived in France, informally met someone here in Dijon just randomly. We sort of struck up a conversation and decided that we would meet once a week in a cafe and we would speak for 30 minutes in English so that he could practice his
Mhm.
English. And then we would speak for 30 minutes in French. And having that sort of weekly appointment with this person
Mhm.
who became my friend over the course of the year was a really wonderful way to feel like I was being useful to him because we were practicing English, but also it really gave me a chance to work on my French as well in an
Mm.
extended way, instead of just those
Yeah.
little interactions with the boulanger or the au
Mm.
supermarché avec le caissier, the caissière. It was a different type of sort of longer interaction every week that I could count on having in a sort of social, relaxed setting.
Mm.
It was really good.
Did he have the same level as you? I think that's quite important to find someone with more or less the same level.
Yeah, more or less, I think he did. Yeah,
Mm.
I don't remember there being a big difference in our
Yeah,
levels, so I think it
yeah.
was okay. Yeah,
Partenaire linguistique.
yeah.
There are a few websites, by the way, where
Ah,
you can find online language partner.
oh,
I
cool.
can put the links. I don't have any experience with it, but I know that exists. Wherever you go in France, if it's a town or a city, surely there will be some pubs. Usually it's like the Irish pub or the international pub that propose language exchange. Café Polyglot, often it's a bit like younger people, maybe. I think the crowd is a bit young, but yeah, I think you can find, you also, little tip, you can find that potentially in the AVF,
Yes,
Accueil des villes
des villes
françaises.
françaises. Uh-huh.
Voilà, I think this is a good place to connect with, and maybe they could offer that.
Yeah.
It will be a possibility, or you can in your local Facebook group you can find like ask for anyone shared my interest, want to be my language partner. That would be a good way to do it, no?
What happened to me is I was literally walking into an internet cafe because this was in the days of internet cafes, and I held the door open for someone, and I smiled at him. And he started talking to me, and
Wow.
when I spoke with my accent, it was his idea. He was like, oh, I'm looking for someone to practice my English with, and he was like, do you want to do that? Does that interest you? And at first I was a little bit, on the defensive. Who are you? What do you want to do? But I was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, sure.
Well, you do have a beautiful smile. It's kind of welcoming, like this large smile. Like, that's a nice story. Like, yeah, just to say that it's also the attitude. Like, you could, if you have this kind of open attitude and friendliness about you, I think naturally, I heard many stories of people starting to do this language exchange with their neighbors.
Yes.
And also, it's people who are interested by your culture. So it's amazing to find the bridges and have a little, like debate on how do you say that in your language. And I think it's a really fun way to practice, as you
Yes.
mentioned. Any other things in your learner routine?
I watch TV. There was not so much anymore, but there for a while there, my husband and I in the evening there was a TV show that we'd watch quotidien.
Mhm. Ah oui! It's really part of the French culture. People have to
Yes.
watch that, to see what it is about. They can
It's sort
find,
of
I
a
think,
talk show. It's kind of, they have
yeah,
musical guests and they have sort of different segments every night where they're sort of covering what's happening in the news and sports. Yeah, there was a while, there were years, I think even where it was sort of like our evening, after the kids were in bed, kind of we would watch it. And it's really long, the show itself, so we maybe would
yeah.
just watch part of it. But that was fun. So watching television when I could, and then also just, the interaction with my husband's family.
Of
So
course. Yeah.
these extended family meals, for example,
And
lots of
people can
exposure.
find this show on YouTube.
Oh,
I
Dijon?
think they have
Okay.
some. I think there is rediffusion. I
Okay.
think it's maybe I don't know if they do that every night, but if people they're still in their home country, but of course they could use a VPN and potentially find it indirect on some French TV platform. But I think there are some rediffusion on YouTube, and I think, as you mentioned, Susie, like this is good not only to practice the language, but to understand the French jokes, the humor,
Hmm.
those references. I think you learn a lot by
Yes.
watching those kind of shows.
Well, that
Yeah.
was also sort of my source of news, like that's how I
Mm.
sort of was aware of what was going on, the movies that were coming out, the
Yeah.
new music that was coming out, I don't know, whatever the scandal of the day was, they would talk about it
Yeah.
and cover it.
These days, do you still use your little, the little cahier
Oh, yeah.
or notebook? Do you use it when you
Yes.
watch those shows? Yeah,
Oh,
you
no, not
keep.
when I'm watching, but I have it around.
Yeah,
I keep it around, and
that's
I,
good.
I don't think I've added a lot of words lately, and I've also gotten very lazy over the years. Now I just write the words and don't even include the translation sometimes. But yeah, I think it's great because it really does. It really is interesting to go back and see that now
Yeah.
I know a lot of them.
So I think if people are more, they want to use the app, there is some apps that does that as well,
Oh yes,
like
absolutely.
Quizlet.
Quizlet, Anki.
Voilà. If
Yeah.
people want to do it with the app, because they generate flashcards to
Yes.
revise, so that's
Yes.
quite handy. But I
Yes.
like that you are old school with the paper. I think that's really
Well,
good.
because I've read scientific studies that say that writing
Mm.
words down with a pen,
Yeah.
there's some brain hand connection that sort of helps you remember the word. I don't know, clearly not completely because there's plenty of words in there that I don't remember, but there's something
Yeah.
crucial about writing that can help
Yeah.
anyway, can help you remember.
It's connected with, I guess, the hemisphere of the opposite hemisphere of the brain, or yeah,
Mm.
it's good. And if people want to, because you mentioned that sometimes you forget some of the words in your notebook,
Yes.
uh, there is a little DIY trick that I just want to share. You can take 5 envelopes, and you put the new words in the first envelope. You write them down in a little piece of paper, and on the other side, you can write a synonym in French, or you can write the English translation, up to you. You fold it, put in the first envelope, and then you can quiz yourself, read the word, and say, oh, how do you say that? And if it's correct, if you have the answer, it goes to envelope number 2.
Oh,
And if it's not correct, it stays in envelope number 1. And then the day after, you go through all your envelope, and envelope number 2, if you forgot, it goes back to envelope number 1. If
uh-huh.
you remember, envelope number 3. And when it ends up in envelope 5, you throw them in the garbage. No, I think it's learned. So it's a kind of a way to keep quizzing yourself with those new words
Uh-huh.
in a DIY way. But
Uh-huh.
then you still have to write, as you mentioned. It's like that could be something to not to forget,
Yeah.
all those words. But I like that you do
And
that.
it's spaced retrieval. There's a term for that, and I do it in class as well. Like I
Yes.
kind of bring
Yeah.
back the same vocabulary words week after week, and see how the students are doing for how they're remembering the words that we saw the week last week and the week
Yes.
before.
Yeah, I think most of the learning app, they are based on that, on this repetition, and
Uh-huh.
as you mentioned, the space interval for the
Yeah.
memory,
Yeah.
to it's smart what you do. It's really good. I wanted to ask you something. Sorry, I just thought of that when you spoke before. You mentioned the one moment that was important is when you actively decided to have French friends, to make French friends.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, like, first, how did you do? How does one makes French friends in France? And did that mean for you that willingly you kind of didn't you stayed away from American friends or the international community, and you just like kind of decided to really avoid the international community to go for the more local people?
Um, the year after I graduated from college, when I was living in Dijon for the first time, I had a group of American friends as well. Well, Anglophone, English speaking friends as well, because we were all working in, French schools teaching English. And so I made friends with that group of people as well. But I think that all of us collectively sort of thought that we were interested in meeting French people. So I had at that year I had my language buddy that I would meet once a week. I had this group of people that I knew that were English speakers. But yes, we just, I don't know, we made friends with French people as well. And I think that it was a priority in a sense, not just for me, but for those other people that I would hang out with a bit as well. And then, yeah, I don't know. Yes, I think it was sort of, I think I just decided that I was open to the experience, and that I think just coming and living in France after I graduated from college and had a job here just gave me more chance to interact with French people. I had to find an apartment, interact with my French landlord. I had French colleagues. I don't know, inevitably by just hanging out as a young person in Dijon, I made French friends as well. So yeah, it was an
Mm.
amazing experience.
Became quite organic, like something
Yes. Yeah.
natural.
But it was
Yeah.
something that I knew and recognized that I really needed.
Mm.
Otherwise, I knew that I wouldn't make progress because I had spent a semester in France in a little
Yeah.
American bubble with my American friends.
Ah,
And I didn't make any progress really over the course of a semester. So I knew that was not the right approach for me.
I mentioned before you have this amazing YouTube channel. You do like very grounded, practical videos, and I know that together we kind of we were speaking together that we speak to a little bit the same kind of audience, the people that are either in France or they want to move and come to France, and they have all those questions about expatriation, and because you interact a lot with them and yourself, you give a tour actually in Dijon, if you want to say a word about it. Like they look like amazing tour in Dijon for the people who want to discover your amazing city. And I wanted to ask if you have any tips for people who wants to take the leap and want to come to France, and if there are any parts that maybe people underestimate before moving to France, or like people maybe you think maybe should kind of focus on when they decide to do such a thing.
I'm so happy to be able to share my experience with Dijon in particular, because I've lived here for so many years and I think that it's a wonderful place to live. And I started just sort of talking about my experience living here in France, and inevitably, a lot of my early videos were about Dijon because this is where I live and this is the city that I know the best. And then it's sort of started to occur to me that I wanted to explore more in France. And because I didn't want to be giving the wrong impression on my channel that Dijon was the best city or the only
Mm.
city. So my husband and I have been traveling around and visiting other cities in France, trying to imagine what it would be like for someone who was considering living in these other places, in Annecy, in Nancy, in Reims, in Strasbourg. And and I have just been so impressed by what we've seen in these other cities and how lovely they are and how fun it's been to explore. And so I think my impression is that some people um, are so worried, and I understand because it's such a huge just leap to take, but they're so focused on finding the best place. So it seems to me like a lot of people they think that they have to make this decision, is it's crucial for them, this finding the best place for them. And I think I've realized that Dijon is great, but there are so many other wonderful cities in France as well. And if you wind up, landing in a spot and you realize after a couple months that you've through other exploring that you've done that there's somewhere else that you think would be better fit, that you're free to move around. That's the beauty of coming here and having the choice. But I guess my tip is that Dijon is great and I love it and I would be happy to show anyone around. But there are so many other places that basically anywhere, anywhere you wind up in France, if it fits your criteria, in terms of like being, in terms of climate, I suppose, and in terms of sort of the general size of the city, I think that you almost can't go wrong. I think that, you can find good points about almost any city in France. As long as you keep that open mind, you'll find something that fits and works for you.
By the way, if you never watch Suzi's video, you have to go and jump into the video where you describe when you go to the city because it's so well done. I'm impressed by the amount of, thoughts and how, like you give away like all the questions that people are wondering, like you just illustrate and I saw that you even actually go to the hospital to share like where it is. And it's just like really, really well done, this amount of preparation. And I think it's also because you are truly like listening to what people like their questions. You
Yeah.
are listening to your community, and yeah, I think it's a really good work that you are doing
Oh,
with your
well,
channel. And
it's so fun for one thing, but also
yeah.
I feel like some people they don't have the time to come and do extensive scouting trips. And
Mhm.
so I'm happy to go and look around and report back on what I see. And
Mm.
yeah, so it's fine. It's fun for us.
Your husband also are
Oh yeah.
enjoying those little
Oh
trips.
yeah.
Ah, that's nice. That's nice. Any cities that you explore and you were thinking, oh, maybe I could have lived there. It's quite nice. There is
I
one that's in your
I
radar.
I loved Nancy. I loved it. I don't know. Have you
Ah,
ever been to Nancy?
no, never
It's
actually. Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. And Reims as well. And I was so surprised. I mean, they are both cities that I've been
Mm.
through at different times, but never spent any real time in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so to go through and to imagine living there, it was just I could see myself in either of those places in particular. I mean, every city that we've been to though has been really nice, and we're going to continue exploring, so it's going to be
Ah.
fun. Yeah.
What is one of the next city that you have in your list to explore?
In March, we're going to Grenoble.
Ah, wow.
And in April, we are, well, no, I don't think we have a trip planned, a visit in April, but then in May, we're going to Lille, which I've never been to Lille.
Ah,
Yes.
nice. Near
Yes.
Belgium. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of people don't have time to do a scouting trip. It's because it's kind of a logistic. They have to, like organize, like fly, and a lot of people do those researches from their home country, and they watch YouTube videos and they read. I think a lot through the YouTube videos. I think they watch a lot of explanation about the city, and as you mentioned, it comes down to some criterias. They are like what is important for you, the climate, the proximity with an hospital, the workability. I think you go through those criteria in your video. But I want to speak about those criteria because I think those are like, people wonder, they think about France and they think of those criteria and they just like go through the town or the city. And I wanted to ask you if you reckon that there are things beyond those criteria. What could be considered something maybe that people underestimate? I know, for instance, myself, I work a lot with intuition. I arrive in a place and I know if I could live there or not. There is this kind of vibe. I don't know if you came across that in your experience with your people, like the people in your community, that maybe sometimes those criteria, maybe everything fits the criteria, but it just doesn't work for them, or
Yes, I don't know. I can't think of a specific example where I've heard of that happening, but and I always worry myself when I'm going to visit these cities because I'm only there for a few days,
Mm,
and I feel that I can't necessarily get a I can get a sort of superficial feel for a place, but I don't really know. Like we were in Strasbourg, for example, I was frustrated because I felt like I didn't really have any understanding of the Alsatian, culture
mm,
or history. and we were there just for a weekend, and I didn't have a chance to talk to other people who live there, so I
Um,
felt, that that was another sort of lack or weakness to the video as well. I think the only city that I necessarily really feel legitimate talking about is Dijon because I've lived here for so many years.
yeah.
Um, and but I have heard of people coming to Dijon and walking around downtown and feeling like they have that just, coup de cœur, like they fall in love.
Coup de cœur, it's such a nice expression. I
Yes.
always teach that to the student because I think you can't really translate it in English, and it's like le coup de cœur, like it makes your heart, your heart race. It's like you
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
love at first sight, coup de
yeah.
foudre, like yes, it's the same, like it's you just know, yeah. And I've heard I've
Mm.
heard people tell me that they've felt that way walking around in Dijon. So
No, it's an excellent point because I know a lot of people like spend so much time and effort to try to figure it out from abroad. So I think that's why your video are so good for people because that could orientate them towards maybe to explore themselves places or but yeah I was just having this question about the criteria because I find that I just know that for some people, yes, everything matches, but sometimes there is like an element that
something
is
is
kind of
off.
hard. Yeah,
Yes, I
yeah,
understand. Yeah.
yeah,
No, and
that
I
could be.
and my criteria that I'm looking for when I'm visiting these cities probably doesn't correspond with other people's necessarily. Like that it's become a running joke, but I'm obsessed with trams. And so anytime there's a tram, I, I'm standing there just, oh, it's so cute. Oh, I love it.
It is nice. It's a nice transportation. I like it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
But I don't think that that's necessarily like make or break for a city,
yeah,
like there's other bus
yeah.
systems that are perfectly good. But when
So
there's a tram.
what are the criteria? Could you just say them? Share your like what are the things that you explore in your little trips?
Well, I try to look at transportation. So I try to look at public transportation, walkability, bikeability, access to Paris, usually, access to international airports. And then I try to look at sort of some economic factors if I feel like I can get a sense of that. I try to briefly speak about the climate. I look at air quality, just population size, general, where it is compared to other related to other cities in France. And then I tried to talk a little bit about the sort of architectural style of the city or the size of the city
Mm.
as far as I can get in a weekend. And then I try to sort of just, show where we stayed and what we
Yeah.
ate and if we went to any of the historical sites. But we just don't have, oh, and then like you said, I try to go to the university and the hospital and just to mention those things because I think it's interesting
Yeah.
to talk about healthcare. But I just, do my, real estate. I usually try to find a few
Ah,
listings and
yes,
see
I
how
saw
much
that. Yeah.
housing costs and if housing
Mm.
is you know, comparably, easy or more difficult
Mm.
compared to other cities that are similar. So I
Yeah.
do my best, but it's pretty rudimentary.
You've been working with a lot of American expats and future expats. And do you have any advice or like a recommendation, like something that could support people in their expatriation and integration in France? As you are for me, you are kind of the model of someone very like integrated that could call France a home. So do you have like anything that you want to share with the people who are listening to us?
I think you've mentioned this already, but I think just to reiterate that um, most French people that you come into contact with are going to be helpful and open-minded and generous with their time and um, they will be happy to help you as much as they can. They may be a little brusque, they may be a little bit, in a hurry at times as well, but for the most part, people are very welcoming and curious about other people and I think will be very welcoming to people who are come here with an open mind and come here with the intention of participating in their local community and meeting French friends and um, Yeah, I think that it, like you said, it's just sort of about open-mindedness and curiosity, and that you can have a great life here, even if you feel, at times a bit awkward or that misunderstood or a bit lost. Like all of that is so normal, I think, as long as you sort of
Yeah.
anticipate it and, you can talk to your other expat friends about it or your French teacher,
Mm.
your French friends even, and they'll help you through it.
And do you think that there is a part that people underestimate, like for this like readiness, the mindset needs to be open, and do you think that there's some part that people don't really look at before moving?
I don't know. That's a good question. Um, Seems to me like people are doing a lot of research and that people
Yeah.
really are very well prepared. And it's maybe maybe the language aspect, like maybe, but I think that people resolve to work on their French, or they assume it will be easier to work on their French once they get here. But maybe it's a good idea to start ahead of time and give yourself more exposure, like you said. I mean, what I think is so amazing about technology now is that you can like create a French bubble at home in the States before you even
Yes.
leave. And I think that it's, like you said, it's kind of just a matter of making up your mind and resolving to do it.
In my one-to-one sessions with expat over 50, the same situations come up again and again. Talking to the delivery man, dealing with everyday admin, going to the hairdresser, feeling blocked in simple conversations. Not because your French is bad, but because real French is real. After years of teaching and coaching, I decided to put all of this experience together and build a course designed specifically for you and for your daily life in France. It will be very, very practical and empowering. Right now, I'm in the creation phase and I'd love to co create it with you. I've put together a Google form below where you can tell me what you really struggle with and what would make French easier and more confident for you. There is no commitment. By filling the form, you'll be added to the waiting list for the first cohort, get priority access and a special launch price as a thank you. Merci for helping me build the best possible course for expat over 50. That's going to be really good for you. If daily life in France sometimes feels harder than it should because of the language, this is for you. Merci beaucoup.
But it's so possible these days. So it's just a matter of, like you said, just kind of getting organized and making a commitment to doing it. And you will see the results.
Merci beaucoup, Suzy. Thank you for everything. And I encourage people to have a look to your YouTube channel. I'm pretty sure most of you already know Fired Up Suzy. And also encourage people to take a tour with you. Like if I were like doing a scouting trip, I would love to stop by Dijon and do an amazing tour with Suzy. I will put the link of your tour and everything below the video.
Thank you. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Suzy. À bientôt.
Salut!
And I also wanted to thank you, merci beaucoup, to watch the conversation, to watch the channel, to be part of the community. That means a lot for me and that always keeps me motivated to see a little like on the video, to see that I have new subscriber and to read your beautiful comments. So please, if you have any thoughts, any remarks, any doubts that came with this video, feel free to share them with us in the comment section. And also, I wanted to tell you, as I'm getting inspired by Suzy, who really craft the content for our community. If you have any ideas about a video that could imply French content, I don't know, if you're living France and speaking to the plumber, setting up your internet or anything like that, or if you want a video specific about some French sentences, compliment a French person, or you struggle with a very situation like the typical question to ask a French person, please let me know and I would be really happy to do my next videos according to what you ask me. So thank you very much, merci beaucoup and see you very soon. À très très bientôt.